Hello, everyone. My name is Kaylin Trevisano, and today I'm going to present to you my research proposal, which examines the effects of dirt roads alongside aspen trees in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado. Just a brief overview for what I'm going to be talking about today. First, we'll talk about the road edge, the significance of this study, previous research of this topic, my hypothesis, my objective of this study, and my three specific aims. Then we'll talk about the experimental design. Last but not least, roads are found pretty much everywhere. And in rural areas, a lot of these roads tend to be dirt roads. As people drive on these roads, dust can kick up and coat vital vegetation that surrounds these roads. And if that happens, it may have adverse effects on wildlife, other plants, and all around the whole habitat. So why do this study? Well, by doing this, we could form a more thoughtful development in aspen forests, speaking of roads specifically, and this may help to combat climate change. There is a lack of research in this area. Most of the research on this topic is done on larger roadways, normally in urban areas. Aspen forests are known for their great biodiversity as they provide animals with a food source as well as a great shelter source, even for large animals. And lately, there has been a larger attraction to rural areas. And maybe this is because of the option for people to do remote work or online work, for another word, as rural areas have seen an influx in travelers from urban areas the past few years at least. There is a problem of habitat loss in the San Juan Mountains basin, and this could lead to a whole unhealthy forest if this problem isn't taken care of. Some previous research that I found shows that moisture in aspen communities is it's plentiful, and that could be a great way for biodiversity to be maintained. In drier areas, biodiversity isn't as abundant. Another study shows that dust on leaves leads to reduced selectability for wildlife. An example would be ungulates. They may not want to eat the leaves if there's dust on them. Another study shows that dust may influence the rate of photosynthetic activity, which means in this study, a decrease in photosynthetic activity. So that would lead to less oxygen in the air and more carbon dioxide in the air. And we need oxygen to breathe. This study also shows that there's a decreased stomata closure at night in the leaves of aspen trees. And another study shows that the reduction in chlorophyll A can lead to poor leaf health. And this study was focusing on leaves being coated with dust or particulate matter. My research hypothesis for this study is whether dirt roads alongside aspen trees can cause habitat degradation in habitat of the San Juan Mountains of Colorado, more specifically Hinsdale County. And that's what this topographic map is of Hinsdale County. My objective for this study is to evaluate the habitat near dirt roads versus a 1 mile radius away from dirt roads. I have three specific aims for this study. My first one is to determine if aspen tree leaves alongside dirt roads change more quickly than aspen tree leaves not alongside a dirt road. My second aim is to determine potential loss of quality in aspen tree species. And my third aim is to determine potential cascading effects on climate change and habitat from degrading tree quality. My experimental design will include an experimental group, which has 10 groves of aspens on the roadside, a control group, which includes 10 groves at least 1 mile radius away from the roads. And for each grove, I will require there to be at least 50 trees in each grove. For my aim 1 methods, we will compare groves of experimental groups and compare it to the control group that I mentioned earlier. To do this, we will observe the aspen trees individually and figure out a percentage of green and changed leaves on each tree. For my second aim, I'd like to measure the height of each tree, as well as particulate matter of the experimental group, and then compare it to the control group in the region. To measure tree height, I'll be using a clinometer, and that's what I included in this image right here from envirofonpa.org. In order to measure particulate matter, I'll use dry measurement for non-aerosols, which includes liquid particles. And for wet measurements, I'll use a wet measurement for condensable materials. For my third aim of the study, we will A, survey wildlife in both groups, B, measure temperature, oxygen, moisture, particulate matter, and greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, and sulfur dioxide. In order to account for larger animals and birds, I'll set up game cameras and we'll do observations for both of these types of animals. In order to account for insects, we'll set up transects. And to identify air composition in these sites, we will use detector tubes. And that's what I show in this photo right here. So what you do is you have to include the gases that you're trying to test for, which would be oxygen and the greenhouse gases I mentioned earlier. My anticipated outcome for this study: for the control sites, I expect there to be a greater percentage of green aspen leaves. There should be greater moisture, greater wildlife diversity, plus more oxygen. And for the experimental sites, I expect there to be higher temperatures, greater particulate matter, as well as a greater amount of greenhouse gases. In summary, what we talked about today, first we talked about the road edge, then we talked about the significance of the study, previous research supporting this study, the hypothesis, the objective, specific aims, experimental design, last but not least, anticipated outcome. I would like to thank my reviewers, Carla Zaraga, Samantha Ulrich, and Sydney Storms, as well as Dr. Park and Dr. Musa Diawara. And if you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to contact me at my email listed on the screen. Thank you.